And if California were to launch a game, it would probably be automatically one of the most popular games in the world, which would then put in play the 180 to 200 million people that The Economist magazine estimates is the worldwide market. And plus, there would be opportunities potentially for compacts where a state that is small and has a liquidity issue like Nevada may want to join in with California. Who knows? I'm not advocating anything, I'm just talking about different scenarios. Anyway, this of interest to states is they're going to really look at this. And this goes back, this was very much a topic in my dissertation. Who plays in the industry, who's allowed to come in. And we really look at this type of stuff in just about any state. Anybody that's been through a licensing investigation in New Jersey, they really look at this. And they do not only background checks like criminal background checks, but they do extensive forensic accounting analyses on you. They look at you backwards and forwards. They do big spreadsheets on all your ins and outs, sources and uses of funds. And you better be able to explain any big holes. They're going to go do income reconstruction. They're going to look at your house and does it make sense with your income. And this is something that we don't do very well in California. We have more of what's known as a cop shop. You know, we have guys that wear guns and we need guys that have pocket protectors. I always tell the story of Al Capone in the United States. The guys with the guns just got a lot of people killed. It was the accountants that buried him, put him away. And I think if you're going to understand the background and integrity of a casino operator, you have to be able to follow the money. It's just like politics. We're also going to look for sound operational controls. That's to eliminate anything. If you're going to have players put money on deposit, we want to know where that is and that it's safe and protected. We want to make sure there's not the opportunity to launder money in those systems and stuff like that. This is pretty typical. Other things they're going to look at is we'll probably tax this, or some participants in this market will be taxed, and we want to make sure we're getting that money. There will be robust audits on the system to make sure that all fees and taxes are being collected. And then there are safeguards in place to protect the vulnerable. And this is a very, very difficult area. I had the great honor of speaking at the National Council of Problem Gambling convention last fall in Milwaukee. And I talked about this. This is what I talked about. We have to be very, very careful on protections for the vulnerable. And the vulnerable are problem gamblers and pathological gamblers. Those people that suffer addictions and impulse control disorders. What one finds is that we can put enormous controls on the systems, but then we may destroy the game. And if we destroy the game, we've done something very wrong, because the reality in the state of California presently is there is something just south of 1 million people playing on the internet. So the question really isn't, should we have internet or should we not have internet? The question is, do you want to continue to let this thing run free illegally, or does one want to put some controls on it? Because we have substantial play. And if we develop in the context of a government, if our government decides that this is the way to go with an internet system, and then they make that game so terribly unpopular, that will really help the illegal sites. Because by the very act of the government saying, yes, internet's okay, it's then hard to say, well, you shouldn't play on these illegal sites. It kind of legitimizes them in a way. So you have to make the game popular. There's some great examples out of Atlantic City. I worked in Atlantic City in the early days, and they wanted to protect people. And they wanted to protect people that at 4 a.m, they would shut down the casino. And so they shut it down. Now, if anybody knows the Atlantic City experience, you know that it was built in an extraordinarily depressed neighborhood. Terribly depressed. Also, in the early days of the industry, there was very little parking, so people had to really walk a long ways to get back to their cars. Now, think about this. I want everybody in my building to get out of chips and into cash and walk across a depressed neighborhood at 4 a.m. That's a scary proposition. So in trying to protect this vulnerable segment, they created a growth industry among muggers in the Atlantic City markets. A lot of people in the gambling industry kind of think they're rock stars and celebrities. In California, we really have rock stars and celebrities. As a matter of fact, we elect one governor every now and then. We elected Reagan and we elected Schwarzenegger. And if it's not a rock star or a celebrity, the governor probably dated a rock star or a celebrity. I mean, so the standards of being a celebrity in California are fundamentally different than they are for a small state. I think you need to respect the complexity of a legislator's job. In California, we have a huge aerospace industry. Someday they may be in a meeting working through the details of that. We have a forestry industry. We have a fisheries industry. The state of California is the 9th largest economy in the world. The state of California, based on gross domestic product, is bigger than Russia. It's bigger than India. It's bigger than Spain. It's bigger than South Korea. It's bigger than Mexico. It's a big country. To be a legislator there, you need to know a lot of different things. And so they may be talking aerospace, they may be talking healthcare, and then the next meeting's on internet. And quite frankly, these guys don't know everything they need to know about any of those areas. And internet's a very new area, so you need to respect that. You need to be participating in the process to educate them. And when you say, you know, we've been regulated, we're going to save you a lot of time, just trust us. What you're saying is, we don't want your most powerful union, our investigators and our enforcement people, we don't want them to work. That's what we hear. So we want to regulate you. I'm sure these unions want their people who they have the greatest amount of respect for to participate in that regulatory process. And to suggest they shouldn't kind of sends a terrible message to our state, a terrible message to an extraordinarily powerful group. Bring adult supervision. I don't understand, in the context of a conference call to reveal the financial results of your property, why you need to rip the leader of the Democratic Party, especially if you want to take your act to California, where you have a Democratic Attorney General, you have a Democratic governor, you have a supermajority of Democrats in the Senate, which means that's 66%. They can do whatever they want, basically, and the same in the Assembly. So if you feel that your stock is enhanced by talking disrespectful about a Democrat, you know, and your next stop is California, there may be a conflict there. You know, if you're going to spend $40 or $50 million in a state to destroy the image of gambling, what's that about? So I guess bring adult supervision. We expect, in the old school tradition, people to really kind of be respectful of the industry, be respectful of the processes we have, and then learn. I was always fascinated by the industry's inability or unwillingness to learn. I was the consultant to the city of Detroit when they introduced casinos, and not one person called me afterwards of the 11 people and said, what do you think about our proposal? Was it good or bad? People lose, and it's because they were juiced out politically. People win because they're brilliant. But these are opportunities to learn, and it seems like the chief consultant, you should call him and see, what did we do right, what did we do wrong? Same thing with Kansas. Only one firm called me, Harris. An executive from Harris called me and said, what did we do right, what did we do wrong? We want to learn. And that just fascinates me. There's almost a touch of arrogance there, you know. You've got to learn in the internet space. If you want to play in that game, it's going to be a state-by-state slog. And a lot of you have already made a two-year mistake. You've wasted 2 years believing in something that didn't happen, a federal model. With term limits in any state, one group gets enormously powerful, and that is the lobbyists. The second group that gets somewhat powerful is the bureaucrats, and that's me. And if we get a product we don't like, we don't understand, we're going to overregulate it. And one of the things I did, I was speaking at UNLV, and there was a symposium at UNLV about internet. And after it, there was a little bit of a cocktail party, and I went to that group, a group of vendors, and I kind of barged into them, and I kind of scolded them. I was on a bit of a rant. I said, you people, we don't know what we're doing. Let me explain to you what our enforcement people are doing now. We had a $72 million shrinkage in our state on the amount we can pay for law enforcement. That closed some narcotics divisions. That were forced down through the system by seniority, which means all our gaming agents were forced out of the system, And the gaming agents are now replaced by narcotics agents because the system is driven by seniority. So as a commissioner, I can look forward to cases where I am looking at drug bust in parking lots, drug bust in break rooms, and drug bust in bathrooms. Okay, doke. These people don't really understand internet. And if there was to be a bill passed, here, regulate this thing. Last year at Gigsy, one of the things that was so frustrating was we would pick up in the paper that the tribes were there, the Congress was there, our legislators were there, the lobbyists were there, the lawyers were there, the regulators weren't there because we have no budget. We have zero budget, basically, to travel and learn. I wanted to go to the Nevada Gaming Control Board to look at a paper-saving thing. I paid my own way. I paid my own way here. I pay my own way everywhere in the state. We don't have time to learn. And if we don't know what we're doing, I don't care how good or bad your bill is, we're going to slow it down. We're going to potentially overregulate it. And one of the things I did at UNLV, I scolded them. I said, you never teach us. And it was so neat because there's this woman from Geo Comply, Anna Sansbury, and she came up to me and she said, I scolded her. I said, we don't know anything about what's going on. And I got back to my office and she called me up. I'm flying into Sacramento. I'll meet with your people. I'll teach them whatever you want me to teach them. And since that time, we've had a number of firms do that. And if you're going to learn any science, you need to start with the vocabulary. And we get people from the governor's office and the Senate and the Assembly and the lottery and all the different segments of the government. We sit in rooms and these people come and make presentations. And so all of a sudden we begin to learn words about geolocational analysis. We begin to get words about how you do age verification. And that doesn't mean we're going to do anything, but we are learning the language. And as you learn the language and you learn the science, fear goes away. And the worst thing you can do as a regulator, or the worst thing for an industry, is to have it being regulated by people that are ignorant and afraid. And right now, if gambling were to be, this type of gambling were to be legalized in the state of California, there are a lot of people that are very ignorant and very afraid. And ignorant's not a bad term. I'm not using that. I'm using it, they just don't know. So what I would suggest, and what's really good about us, is you don't have to buy us anything. You can't even buy us lunch. You know, when people come in, I'd like to buy you lunch. Nope. You know, we're controlled by some very strict ethical requirements. So when you come to see those legislators and when you come to see those lobbyists, that's great. But you should have someone assigned to the regulator that shows up and says, look, we want you to understand what we're doing. Do you have any questions? Can we help you in any way possible? And if you're interested in the future, you're going to pursue that strategy, I think. It's just the way to go, you know. A regulated industry and its regulators need to communicate. And the more they communicate, the better off they are. You see this in tribal governments all the time. You guys communicate with one another. You know, it's like, let's not tell the regulators what we're doing. That's nonsense. But you've got to get us up to speed. You've got to get us up to speed. We have a bunch of people appointed to office that have no background in gambling, so you need to help us get up to speed if you want this thing to happen. Otherwise, we'll blow it up. I mean, we just will. It's just human nature. Anyway, that's pretty much. It's a terrible death to be talked to death, and I don't want to do that to you. I hope I haven't annoyed anybody too badly. But thank you very much.